The clock is now running on the Playbook podcast, the podcast where you take a deeper dive into the game of business, leadership, teamwork, character, the things that drive your motivation and build dedication. When you get a good look at the game plan of great business leaders, you start to formulate your own playbook and your own rise to the top. Make your next play your best play. And now, here are today's game captains, Glenn Amaral and Andy Phillips. Let's go!
Welcome back to the Playbook podcast. I'm Andy Phillips. Joining me, as always, is Glenn Amaral. Glenn, how we doing?
I'm doing great. Just working on my lighting here.
I do the same. But hey, we got a great guest today. And typically this is a time where Glenn and myself do our pregame warm-up. We do a question to each other to get us warmed up and ready for our guests because we have that much respect for them. But we have so much respect for this next guest that we've already done a podcast today. So we're already so warmed up. We just want to get right to it and capitalize our time with the guest. So without further ado, Glenn, it's on you.
All right. Well, today we have a wonderful guest. We have Melissa Ortiz, a former HHS Commissioner of the Office of Disabilities, keynote speaker, and advocate for people with disabilities. And I really don't want to take up her whole half an hour with her accomplishments. So I'm going to introduce you to Melissa. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Glenn. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic.
Good.
So
Andy, how are you?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you asking. We're very excited for this one.
Yes.
Thanks.
So what we do, Melissa, is we start out with the first half, which is going to be business-related questions. Then we get into a halftime where we get to know you a little bit better, some fun questions. And then the second half is on leadership. So I'm going to kick things off. You advocate for inclusion and equality for people with disabilities. Can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like?
It looks different on different days, but my passion in life is making sure that everybody has a seat at the table and that everybody has a chance to be heard. And one of the things I'm most proud of that I helped advocate for during the last administration was during COVID. We were having a situation where people who were hearing impaired could not read lips through the masks. So we advocated for the the plastic shields. They probably needed to be plexiglass, but they were basic plastic shields. And we advocated for things like that. I advocated for things like that. I believe that given the right supports, everybody has something to contribute.
Oh, that's awesome.
Phenomenal.
It's the things that the rest of us don't always think about on a day-to-day basis. So we really appreciate you advocating for those people.
Thanks. And it's advocating for me too. I'm a wheelchair user. I was born with spina bifida. And even as recently as last week, I went in the doctor's office and into the lab part of the office. And because of COVID, they had only one window open and it was not a window that I could reach. And so I was really anxious because I'm preparing for surgery in about a week. And I had to put my advocate hat on and take my patient hat off.
Okay.
And not melt down.
Well, good. That's a good way to think of it. And, you've already kind of alluded to it, but you spent a lifetime overcoming, adversities, inconveniences. Tell us how those early challenges have really helped create a powerful, passionate, person and advocate that you are today and to create the equality for all.
Being born with a disability isn't for the faint of heart, but I'm a person of faith. I believe that God chose to trust me with this, and he chose to trust me because he knew I could handle it with his support and because of his support. So being born into a suburban Atlanta, upper middle class family when everybody else was going to cotillion and things like that, there I was. They weren't sure until I was about 3 how I was going to progress and things like that. And I began to notice that other people around me were different and I wanted to give up. My mother was brilliant. I started first grade in a wheelchair. I was ambulatory, but I'd had surgery. So I needed to be in the chair and until I could learn to walk again. I came home after about 3 weeks of school and I said, Mom, I want to stay home tomorrow. I don't feel good. And she said, I don't believe you, but all right. You can stay home and we'll see how this goes. While I was sleeping, she cleared my room of everything that was at all entertaining. And she flipped my doorknob around so that I was locked in my room when I woke up. There I was, 6 years old, thought I had the world on a string and I was going to stay home from school. No. I was let out for bathroom breaks. She went across the street and got my homework from the school. And I have to mention too, I'm a 5th generation teacher. So she had me at home knowing what she was doing and teaching me at home. The next morning, I decided that maybe school wasn't such a bad idea after all. And I was ready to go at the door, dressed, fixed up, and packed and ready to walk across the street for school.
I love it. I love it. One of those lessons, right?
Mm-hmm. And that just created a burning fire in me to go. My husband jokes now as an adult, I'll be 55 in a couple of weeks. And he says, I decided that when I married you, that God gave me very, very long arms so that I could reach over and pick you up by the shoulders out of whatever you'd gotten yourself into and save you. And we joke about it being like Scrappy-Doo and Scooby-Doo from the cartoon, because I'm always like, let me at him, go. And he's like, no, you're going to sit over here and you're going to calm down and think about this rationally, and then you can go get it.
That's great. You need somebody to advocate for you like that. Just to give it a minute before you react, right?
Absolutely.
Now, we talked about this a little bit offline when we were on the phone the other day, and it was really interesting to me. You collaborate with businesses about including and accommodating people with disabilities. What do you find is a common misconception?
That it's going to be too expensive.
Exactly.
And that's what I hear over and over again, or I hear the other misconception that because a business has less than a certain number of people, they don't have to be accessible. Well, yes, they do. For customers coming in, you have to be accessible. And you have to provide some way for a customer with a disability of any sort to be able to access your goods and services. So I go in and I help with that. And on the flip side, I help employers learn about people with disabilities and making workplace accommodations so that they can hire those people with disabilities so that they become productive tax-paying citizens, as opposed to being relegated to being on public assistance for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, that was a really an eye-opening conversation with me. That is awesome.
I'm going to sneak a drink here.
Well, I got my coffee all day long.
Well, cheers.
Excellent.
All right.
I should have water.
All right. So can you just describe, take as much time as you need or as little as you need. I know you could probably actually talk all day about this next question. Describe your roadmap to land the position of HHS Commissioner of Disabilities.
Well, it was rather circuitous. I was all in for Ted Cruz in 2015 when he first announced, and went and worked on his campaign. And I have a problem that doesn't always work well in DC. I have a huge sense of personal loyalty, and I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but when I believe in you, I'm going to support you until you give me reason not to. And I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to support you, and I'm going to defend you. And I had a really bad taste in my mouth, even though I love Donald Trump. I had a really bad taste in my mouth about the interactions that he and the Cruz campaign, that the two campaigns had with each other. And so I was just not having it. And Ted sat me down and he said, all right, look, we have a binary choice. I'm out, and it's either Trump or it's Hillary, and you need to decide what you're going to do. So I was all in for President Trump, because his ideas about smaller government and local control and addressing the debt and our financial cliff issues that we have in front of us, and personal autonomy, those things matter to me, and he supports those things. So I supported him. And as soon as he won the election, a bunch of my friends started the hashtag Mr. Trump hire Melissa, President Trump hire Melissa. And then it became hire Melissa. And I applied because they have what they call the plum book, and you can apply for any of the jobs in the book. And so I applied and stuck my resume out there and approached everybody. And what I thought I wanted to do was to be the White House advocate on disabilities. And they had something better in mind for me, which was this position at HHS. And things moved slowly. It was really hard to get the appointees through. And I just kept going to meetings and talking to people and reminding people that I was out there and that I wanted to help and that I wanted to be a part of things. Then after he was sworn in January, I was invited to a meeting at the White House in the Indian Treaty Room, which I will admit, even though I'd been to the White House before, I was completely geeked out, walking around with my camera, taking pictures and things like that. And it was in a meeting with then Secretary Tom Price, the Vice President, and several pretty well-known names in the policy arena, conservative policy arena in DC. And I was the only person in the room with a disability or a visible pre-existing condition. And we were talking about Obamacare repeal, replacement, how do we need to handle this? And I had downloaded the legislation and I read through it, and my ability to kind of connect the dots can be a dangerous thing too sometimes, because I ask hard questions. And I sat in this meeting and I sat there and I listened to everybody talk, and I came in with my two-inch binders with this 2,000-page legislation spread out in front of me, and I'm looking and I'm showing it off, and I've got my notes and my Post-it notes, and I can feel people around the table looking at me and looking at each other like, she's got something ticking up there, but we don't quite know what it is. And I knew Secretary Price when he was in Congress, as I knew Vice President Pence when he was in Congress. So they both had a level of trust in me, and I'm sitting there and I don't know how much you know about Southern girls, but when a Southern girl folds her hands like this and puts it on the table and sits up straight and just kind of looks at you, the fur's getting ready to fly. And I was trying so desperately to keep my hands in my lap and stay calm. But some of the things that were being discussed were just silly. And they made good sense on paper, but when you started understanding people's stories, you understood why people with pre-existing conditions were being left out in the cold. And so the Vice President finally looked at me and he said, "You're wearing the Southern lady look of disapproval, and I'd like to know why." And I said, this legislation is not going to work for people with disabilities or other pre-existing conditions because it denies us the dignity of work. The way that this is written forces us to make a choice between using our gifts and talents and education and training, or sitting at home and being on Medicare and Medicaid. And he said, "Could you unpack that for me, please?" And so I did. And he gave me like 10 minutes to unpack it. And I said, "And by the way, just so that you know, for 8 years, I've had to be an independent contractor because nobody would hire me on our side of the aisle, because I was either too dramatic for their office with my service dog and my wheelchair and different, accommodations and needs that I had in their mind they were too dramatic, or I was going to create too much cost on their insurance policy." And I said, "And incidentally, 4 of them are sitting here at the table with me." And I thought that he would let that go. I should have known better. And he looked me square in the eye and he said, "I'd like names, please." I was scared to death.
You're mortified.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And then it came to me in a flash. Fortunately, I have the ability to think quickly on my feet. And so I said, "But Mr. Vice President, you and I are both Reagan Republicans, and Reagan Republicans do not speak ill of each other by name." And he said, "Touche." And after the meeting was over, we were invited over to the Oval Office to meet with the president and talk about some of the things that we had discovered and kind of fleshed out in the meeting. And all of a sudden, the vice president appeared at my elbow and he said, "So, Melissa, were the 4 people, this person, this person, this person, this," and without exception, he named them. And I said, "Because you asked me a direct question, I'm not going to lie to you." And I said, "Yes, those are the 4 people." And he said, "Well, one of them I know the backstory on." I said, "Right." And he said, "The other 3 I don't know." But he said, "The way that I figured it out was this: the minute you opened your mouth, they were all about to jump out of their skin. They were clicking their pens and they had all these tics that were telling." And he said, "And you just kept talking."
Read
Like
the room.
you could, like you could care less. I said, "I know. And I saw those tics too, but I knew that you had given me the opportunity to speak. And I believe that I'm here to speak for the dignity of all people, disabled or not. But specifically in this situation, I want to speak to the dignity of work for people with disabilities so that they can feel contributory and they can have a sense of autonomy and control over what they do." Because here's the thing: if you're on a government entitlement, if the government writes you a check, it can tell you what to do with that check eventually. And so I think that people with disabilities need to have the opportunity to be self-supporting. And we make that happen by good business practices. So then after that conversation was over and we talked to the president, had a photo op, and I had to retrieve my service dog from the top of the Resolute desk. She decided that she was going to jump out of my lap onto the desk, and I nearly had a heart attack when she did it. The president was really cool about it. Some of the Secret Service agents weren't thrilled, but yeah, we dealt with it and went on. And
Annie Oakley.
Yes, exactly. So the chief of staff at that time at HHS pulled me aside and he said, listen, the secretary and I would like to talk to you about a job. And then let's see, that was late January, early February. And in mid-June, I was sworn in to my position. Wow. And it was a presidential appointment. It was the honor of my life. And if I had not had physical issues and some other logistical issues, I would still be there. Would have still been there through the term. Obviously not now since we have a change in administration, but I'm really excited to work with the new administration and see what we can agree on. Because I think we're at a point in this country where we need to focus on what we do agree on instead of the things that we disagree on. Otherwise, there is no moving forward.
Amen.
No, you're right.
Your story's great, and people just really need to come together. And it's one thing that you hear people say it all the time, but it's the actions you actually put into doing that. And I think focusing on what you agree on right now is important. But Glenn, do you have something to add to that?
No, I think she really summed it up. What a great story and a great route to that position. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Melissa, we are now at halftime, and halftime here on this show is a speed round. So speed round, we're going to ask you 10 questions. You can give us a short answer. There's sometimes follow-up questions depending on your answer. If you have any explanations, add it in, but it's a classic speed round. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What is your favorite board game?
Scrabble.
No question. All right.
Maybe a second board game would be Chutes and Ladders. The kid game.
What is your favorite food?
White pizza, specifically New York style white pizza.
I love white pizza and I love New York style. So I'm with you on that. How many states have you lived in?
10, I think.
Can you name them?
Okay, so it's less than that, but it's okay, so Tennessee, Georgia, Tennessee, Illinois, New York, and I had long-term residencies like 6 months or more in California, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Alabama. So that's 9. And DC, let's not forget DC. Woohoo! I was not wrong.
We got 10.
I was not wrong.
All right. You've already confirmed this to me beforehand, but there is a rumor that you do New York Times crosswords in ink, not a pencil, no eraser option. So my question being, having, the brain I have, is how many times do you make a mistake? Because my entire thing would be scribbled out. How often would you say you make a mistake? Is it once per crossword? Is it once every 5, every 10? What would you say?
Oh, I make at least one mistake every time.
Okay.
And sometimes it's a mistake I can correct with kind of just going over the letter, but I always have a second pen. I do the crossword puzzle in either red or blue ink. Okay. And then I have a black ink pen that I go back over and, correct it if need be. It comes from my days teaching school. I've always got some color ink that I can divert to. And I'm also known for carrying a highlighter at all times. And I will actually be on the Hill at the Capitol and have members of Congress walk up to me and say, do you have a highlighter? And because they always know that which one do you want? So they know that I'm good for it. But I love doing the crossword puzzles in ink. It just gives me a sense of confidence.
This next question, you can explain the very slight backstory that Glenn informed me of. So when is the last time you've been to an opera?
Not recently. It was before the pandemic, I know for sure, maybe even a couple of years before that. But the backstory on that is that my mother is a lyric soprano, and she retired from the Atlanta Opera when I was 5 years old, and then continued to sing on a freelance basis with other companies and with churches and all kinds of different things. And so one of my earliest memories of being a person is being at the Atlanta Opera House, because she was in the Atlanta Opera Company. And I decided that I needed to figure out how the staging worked. And I tried to I wore these little short leg braces. Like they came up to my knees, and they were metal, and they went down and had buckles and things attached to my shoes. I decided to attach myself to the riggings on the stage and see what would happen. That was a mistake. I was promptly tied to the front row after that during rehearsals. For some unknown reason, we could not keep a nanny.
Yeah, unknown.
Completely unknown. I have no idea.
All right. What is your favorite movie of all time?
Steel Magnolias.
I've never seen it. Glenn, have you seen it?
I have. Yes, it's been a while. That's Julia Roberts, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yep.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
And it's Southern.
Okay. It is Southern, and there's a line in the movie. It really resonated me with it when it came out, because I can't have children, and the whole story of Steel Magnolias is her falling in love and getting married and going against the doctor's wishes and having children and having a child, and it ends up costing her life eventually. And when she explains to her family that she's pregnant, she says, "I'd rather have 30 minutes of wonderful than a whole lifetime of nothing special."
Wow.
And that's big. I get it. I completely get it. I'm not supposed to be alive today. I wasn't supposed to live to see my 21st birthday, but I did, and I am, and I'm going. But the cool thing that I keep coming back to is that I've had more than 30 minutes of wonderful. My whole life has been wonderful. There have been absolute horrible moments and things I wish I could forget ever happened, and hurtful things. And growing up with a disability is not for the faint of heart. Aging with a disability is no joke. Aging is a pain in the neck anyway, but aging with a disability is awful. I've had my 30 minutes of wonderful over and over and over again. I have the best life of anybody I know. And so I was able to take that resonance from that one thing and flip it around to being something really positive. But then also there's another character in the movie. Her name is Weezer. She's played by Shirley MacLaine. And she's known for being very outspoken, and she has a Saint Bernard. And I used to have 2 Newfoundland dogs, think black Saint Bernard, but bigger. And I'm known for being very outspoken. And we were riding in the car one night, some friends and I said, so we were all talking about who we were in Steel Magnolias. And I said, "Oh, I'm Shelby." And everybody in unison, every single head swiveled at me and said in unison, "No, you're Weezer." I was like, no.
Alrighty. I love the answer. Now, you got to pick one: coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Okay. If you had to live in a climate that was the same temperature year round, what's your number?
70.
70 degrees. Okay.
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite? I'm asking this because of the Scrabble and the crosswords.
Yes,
What's your favorite singular word in the English dictionary?
Really? I have to pick one?
Gotta pick one.
Intrepid.
And why?
Because it means somebody who's confident and bold and assured, resilient.
Love it.
And my whole life is about resilience.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it.
There's several good words there, some synonyms as well, right? Yeah. Awesome.
And the last question of the speed round.
Yes.
What is your ideal weekend?
Oh, my ideal weekend is to come home on Friday night. My husband and I make a practice of this as best we can. To come home, as soon as we're both home, all electronics are turned off as far as like reachable. My Kindle stays on because I like to read. And so we will kick back, and he usually cooks or brings home takeout, and we stay up binge watching something until 2 or 3 in the morning. And then we sleep until we wake up the next day. And from the time that he comes home, or whoever gets home last, gets home until we wake up on Saturday. There's no email, there's no texting, there's no phone calling. Makes people crazy, but that's all right. The people that are closest to us know that this is the case, and because both of us have mothers with health issues, we have ways of getting in touch with us. But that's just my ideal weekend. And then on Sunday, exactly. And then on Sunday, waking up, and I attend a wonderful Anglican church, and my church is so amazing. With COVID, we've not been able to go, and I'm immunocompromised, and with facing surgery this coming Monday, I'm having to be real careful. In fact, I'm sitting in the library at my church right now because the internet signal was better here than it was at home.
Oh, wow.
4 blocks away. And
We're honored.
Oh, thank you. I'm just thrilled to be here and be out of the house. And it's just so neat to be a part of a group of people who truly teach me about community.
Phenomenal.
And that's my weekend.
Phenomenal.
That's awesome.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Sometimes the simplest things with the people you love are what matter the most. So we're going to move on to the second half here. We probably got about 10 minutes left, so we're going to get into this as much as we can.
Yes.
And this is more focused on leadership and experience. So you've worked at the highest levels of the federal government. What leadership skills are needed for this appointment? I already know you have perseverance, and you have obviously being able to acknowledge what you talk about, but what else would you say?
Conflict resolution. Because one of the things that I did is I met with stakeholders and advocates from the disability community day after day after day. And sometimes groups that you think would get along with each other like peas and carrots don't want to be in the same room with each other. And I found that with some of my staff. And so I just went back to my school teaching days I taught mostly middle school and high school, but I also taught kindergarten. And one of the things that I learned when I was teaching kindergarten is sometimes you just have to put everybody on the naughty stool and let them each take their turn talking. And when everybody feels heard, the temperature in the room goes down and the conflicts can usually be worked out.
Very nice.
So I think that that's the number one thing is conflict resolution.
Phenomenal.
Okay. Well, that was my next question. I was going to ask you, you say you come from a long line of teachers, which is awesome. So do I. So I don't know where I went wrong because I never.
Well, I'm not teaching anymore. So
that's right. So I appreciate that. And that's such an important role in our society. I think you kind of touched on it, but you credit working with students as one of your biggest accomplishments. How has that helped shape you as a leader, in addition to conflict resolution?
It's taught me that I need to listen to what everybody has to say, that I don't need to be the only voice in the room, and that I need to listen because people come up with ideas, no matter how old they are, what their background is, what they bring something to the table. And if I'm patient and if I ask the right questions, I can learn all kinds of things. And sometimes they're not intuitive questions, they're counterintuitive. I knew I had something when Facebook started, and all of my past students, a great majority of them, found me on Facebook and friended me.
Oh, wow.
And I knew that I had imparted something.
No doubt.
The thing that shaped me is, and this is something that has helped me as I work cross aisle, because I'm a conservative and I'm a Christian, but I am absolutely committed to working with both sides of the aisle and finding agreement points. Even when I don't like what's being said or I disagree with what's being said, there's got to be a way to connect. So I would tell my students, I don't care what you believe. When you get out of my class, I want you to be able to explain to me why you believe it. Because knowing what you believe is important, but knowing why you believe it will keep you strong in your convictions, and no matter what they are. And
so true.
I find that if I can sit down with the most liberal member of Congress and he or she can explain to me why they're thinking what they're thinking, it helps me understand it and why they believe what they believe. And sometimes you never know what has caused someone to reach the belief that they have.
Right.
Yep. And you have to, in my opinion, you have to respect other people's opinions. But as long as, if it's on the opposite side, as long as they give you reason, you don't always have to agree with it, but at least there's a thought process behind it.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
we've stopped listening. It's such a key point. We've all, most of us, I don't want to consider myself or you in that category or Andy, but a lot of us have stopped listening to other points of view.
I had to learn to listen again.
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn to listen again. And it's not always easy because you hear things that pull you out of your echo chamber and pull you out of your preconceived ideas.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt.
And that on the flip side of that, I have to be really strong in my convictions in order to pull other people out of their echo chambers and their preconceived ideas.
Yeah, I read somewhere where if you could take somebody else's point of view and carry it with you for a day, just to see how they feel, it's kind of an interesting concept. Just kind of break out of your mold.
It goes back to the whole, if you can walk a mile in somebody else's shoes,
right?
Their path, their path often dictates their thoughts and how it goes from there. But hey, due to time, we are now at the Hail Mary question. We think you're gonna have a great answer for this. So Hail Mary is our last play in the game. It's our last question on the podcast. Go back. You've had an incredible, a well-traveled life, we'll say. You're going back to 22-year-old Melissa. Give her a quick word of advice.
Trust your gut.
I love it.
Trust your gut.
Because you got to where you are.
And the times that I didn't trust my gut, I royally messed up, and it took a long time to dig out of.
I think it's short to the point, but it's clearly based on the last, 28, 30 minutes of this podcast. I think people can understand that you're a go for it type of person. You obviously know what you're talking about, and you have great perseverance and drive. So, if I had to trust your gut, I would too. And I think most people should, though, because a lot of times what's lying in your gut is your passion. And a lot of times that can carry you. So I completely agree. I'm sure Glenn would probably say the same.
Absolutely. So that's great. Is Annie Oakley with you today?
She is. Annie, come here. Come.
Annie Oakley is Melissa's service dog and so cute.
She is. Oh, she's attached. Hang on.
Oh.
I know, honey. I know.
Is this her first podcast appearance?
No, it's not.
She is our first dog.
Yeah.
Awesome. This is Annie Oakley, and she does not like to look at herself, so that's why she's looking away.
I don't like listening to myself, so we have kind of something in common.
So
exactly.
a house of mirrors would be her worst nightmare.
Right.
Exactly, especially floor-level mirrors.
There you go.
Well, Melissa, I'd like to thank you for joining us. It was awesome. I'm going to give you like 30, 45 seconds. Tell us what projects you're working on, what you'd like to, how people could get a hold of you.
I can be reached through social media. My handle is DC Bell on Wheels on Twitter and Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn, and that's DC BELLE on Wheels, as in beautiful. And
right.
And then I'm working on several things. Like I said, I keep alluding to, I am facing a battle with breast cancer. And so I'm pulling back. And the thing that I'm hoping will come out of that is appropriate inclusion and accommodation for people with disabilities in medical offices, because we're lacking. So I'm working on that, and I am building a public speaking career, teaching people how to persevere and how to not just survive trauma and hardship, but thrive.
That's fantastic.
And you've done that, and we're pulling for you.
Thank you.
Absolutely, 100%. I'd like to thank our listeners today. Please be sure to comment and share. And my name's Glenn Amaral.
I'm Andy Phillips.
And I'm Melissa Ortiz.
Awesome.
I love it.
Have a great day. Thank you very much.